Hi everyone, welcome back to our chronological Bible study through Matthew. Have you ever wondered how you can lose your saltiness as a Christian and then be good for nothing other than being trampled underfoot? Well, this is what we're looking at today. So Matthew 5:13, Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavour, how shall it be seasoned? It is good for nothing, but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men." So it's important when we're reading these studies, I always say this, it's important to read the Bible in context. So first let's remind ourselves, who is Jesus addressing? He's addressing Jews who have just finished listening to him give the sermon on the Beatitudes. And what are their current circumstances? Well, they're under Roman occupation, which means they're under oppression by the Romans, and they are also burdened by the law. As I said before, they've now got 613 Jewish laws that they're trying to live up to. So we use salt as a seasoning now, but let's look at what they used salt for in Jesus' day, because that would help us to understand the scripture. So firstly, salt was used as a preservative. They didn't have refrigeration in those days. So salt was used for things like packing meat, pack all the meat in salt, and that limits the growth of pathogenic bacteria, and it also slows down decay in the meat. And then they would also use it to make fermented vegetables as a way to preserve vegetables as well. So you can put vegetables like we do now when we make sauerkraut. You make a brine with salt water and you soak those vegetables in it and they ferment and then they are preserved. That's the first thing they used for as a preservative. Secondly, it was used to flavour food, same as we do now. I love the taste of salt. I don't like sugar, but I love salt. So I season with salt. Meat loves salt. It always tastes better. Everything tastes better with salt. Most of us salt when we cook, and some put extra salt on their food as well. Salt enhances flavour, and once you are used to its flavour, things kind of taste a bit bland when you don't have it. So that was the second thing, is flavouring. Salt is also used for purification and in the offerings and for covenants. Leviticus 2:13, God commanded grain should always be offered with salt. And Numbers 18-19 talks about the covenant of salt was a binding agreement between God and man. Number 4, healing and disinfectant. So even today we use salt to disinfect and heal. We can treat mouth ulcers with salt, we can freshen breath with salt, and we can use salt to kill pathogenic bacteria in wounds. Salt in solution can be used to disinfect surfaces. In those days they used salt for wound healing and disinfectant as well. And then number 5, it can be used as a fertilizer in moderation. Small amounts of salt can be used in agriculture to enhance soil fertility, especially sea salt, because there's lots of minerals in it. So salt was seen as a valuable commodity. What can you season salt with if it loses its flavour? That's what Jesus was asking. If salt loses its effectiveness, either it's become contaminated with impurities, or it's experienced water damage, which could also happen, it could no longer be used for any of those purposes. And so when he's talking about throwing it on the road and it being used and trampled underfoot, that's like when you throw it down as grit. So those roads could get muddy and the salt could be thrown down to keep the mud levels under control, and then it's being trampled underfoot. So with that background in mind, how salt was used and what's going on, what was Jesus saying to his Jewish audience? He was saying that they are valuable and they are important in the earth, like salt. And remember, his listeners are ordinary Jews. They're not the elites, they're not the rich. The ordinary person on the street was valuable like salt. Even in their brokenness and their meekness, they are valuable to God. Remember I said salt was used as a covenant, a binding covenant with God. So by calling them salt, he's also reminding them of the covenant that they have with God as God's people. They are also meant to preserve God's teaching, God's character. They are meant to reflect that to the world. So they are meant to preserve God's justice, mercy, and truth amongst the nations, and Isaiah 42:6 confirms that. In the midst of this moral decay and all the Roman paganism as well that they were surrounded by, they were like seasoning to make life more flavorful, living for God. It was supposed to taste pleasant to serve God. Serving God should reflect love, integrity, and joy, in contrast to lifeless legalism and despair and frustration. Also, Jesus was reminding them of God's covenant with them, that they were an integral part of his plan. Israel was an integral part of his plan to save the world, not by keeping the letter of the law, but by keeping the spirit of it. So they were to be also wound healers to the broken and the hurted individuals and communities. That's what they were supposed to do, like a salve. Their presence might sting at times, like when you put salt on an ulcer, as their lives bring conviction to others, but they were to be like salt to wounds, disinfecting and healing. They were to be like salt, also improving the soil. Remember, Jesus gave a lot of illustrations about soil, planting seeds. The Jewish people who served him and knew were supposed to be like fertilizer, adding nutrients to the soil, making the ground better so that his seeds could flourish in the soil. Their lives should inspire growth and change in others, not through control, but through a faith-filled living that other people can witness. So the warning, if salt loses its saltiness, pure salt, sodium chloride, doesn't lose its saltiness. The impure salt that's, and I say impure, but I don't mean corrupted, like it could, Dead Sea salt, for instance, that's a good salt. It has other minerals in it, but those other minerals could mean it's more prone to decay. So that's what he's talking about. The impure salt, which wasn't just sodium and chloride, could lose its effectiveness, especially if it was contaminated with other things. So Jesus is warning them not to compromise and not to become contaminated, diluted, or indistinct, but to stay true to their God-given identity and purpose. And you did see that a lot with Jews who were taken off to captivity to other areas. They worked hard to maintain their identity and their culture and stay true to who they actually were. This call to be influential in the world around them comes after Jesus has explained the way of salvation in the Beatitudes, and it's a call to rise up and be influencers of good in the midst of all the corruption and the pollution and the religiosity that they're surrounded with. So as we've been doing this chronological Bible study through the book of Matthew, if you would like to hear the rest of the studies, or you missed any, I'm going to put the play link here so that you can go through it. So that's what Jesus is saying in this study, and that's what we can take from it. Although he wasn't directly addressing us, we can still look at it as well. As Christians, we need to be like a preservative to preserve God's holiness, to preserve the love of God and what his intention really was to the world. We need to be seasoning to make people's lives more pleasant. We need to be purifiers, bringing purity into people's lives and helping them to live for God. We need to be healing and disinfecting, even though that might sting sometimes, but we bring healing to people's wounds, and then we can also prepare the soil that God's seeds can take down root and flourish and be more fruitful. So that's the real meaning of this scripture, and I hope to see you in the next Bible study. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe and share these studies with anybody else that you know loves to do deep Bible study and how it applies to life today.